Okay, here's something that's going to rattle around in your brain for a while. For nearly 80 years, every single time Happy Birthday to You was performed commercially, in a movie, on a TV show, in a restaurant, somebody was collecting money on it. An estimated $2 million a year. $56 million total since 1988 alone. And then, in 2016, a federal judge basically said the people collecting all that money may have never legally owned the song in the first place. The copyright they had enforced for decades, possibly invalid from the very start. The song your grandmother has sung at your birthday every single year of your life was free the whole time. The organization that helped enforce it, ASCAP, the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, the most powerful music licensing body in the United States. The same organization that, as of this month, just sent undercover investigators into a bar in New Jersey and filed federal lawsuits against venues in Greensboro, North Carolina. This is the ASCAP story, and I promise you, it goes way deeper than Happy Birthday. By the end of this video, you're going to understand how a nonprofit with a genuinely good mission turned into a nearly $2 billion machine with government-backed legal teeth, undercover agents, and a habit of violating its own antitrust agreements. Buckle up. All right, let's go all the way back to 1913. New York City, Shanley's Restaurant on Broadway, one of the hottest dining spots in Manhattan. A man walks in named Victor Herbert. Now, Victor Herbert was basically the Beyoncé of 1913, one of the most celebrated composers in America. Broadway hits, orchestral pieces, the absolute whole deal. He sits down to eat. The house band starts playing, and then you can almost picture the exact moment his fork stops midair. He hears it. His own music, live, in front of a full dining room, for free, without his permission, without a phone call, and absolutely without a check. Victor Herbert was not the kind of guy to just shrug and order another round. He sued. The case wound its way all the way to the Supreme Court. On January 22, 1917, Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes delivered the ruling. Victor Herbert wins. If you perform copyrighted music publicly, even in a restaurant, you owe the composer. Period. That ruling was the rocket fuel ASCAP needed. ASCAP had officially been founded on February 13, 1914, at the Hotel Claridge in Manhattan. Victor Herbert led the charge, alongside Irving Berlin and a group of Tin Pan Alley composers who were flat out tired of their work being played everywhere while they made nothing. I want to be genuinely fair here, because this matters for the story. The original idea was actually good. Composers were broke. Music was everywhere. Restaurants, hotels, theaters, dance halls, and the people creating it weren't seeing a dime. ASCAP said, we'll collect blanket licensing fees, distribute royalties back to composers. Simple, fair, honestly kind of noble. But here's the thing about organizations that accumulate money and government-backed legal power very quickly. They tend to start confusing themselves with the power itself. Before we get into where this goes sideways, drop a comment. Have you or anyone you know ever gotten a demand letter from ASCAP or BMI? Drop it below. I'll be reading. Fast forward, 1930s. Radio is exploding. Every household in America has one. Music is pumping 24 hours a day across every city and small town in the country. And ASCAP looks at that and thinks, wait, that is an enormous pile of money we are not collecting. Between 1931 and 1939, ASCAP raised the royalty rates it charged radio broadcasters by 448% in 8 years. Radio stations were already paying. They thought they had reasonable deals. And suddenly, ASCAP is hiking rates by basically 5 times. And then, here is the move that broke everything. In 1940, when the contracts came up for renewal, ASCAP announced it wanted to triple its fees again. The radio industry looked at that demand and said, no. Instead of paying, they said, fine, we'll build our own. In 1939 and 1940, radio network executives launched Broadcast Music Inc., BMI, as a direct competitor to ASCAP. They signed up 3/4 of all American radio stations and announced that from January 1st, 1941, ASCAP music was banned from the airwaves. The press called it the blackout. For 11 months in 1941, you turned on your radio, 0 ASCAP songs. No Irving Berlin, no Cole Porter, no Broadway standards. Radio stations played BMI licensed music, public domain folk songs, and here's the part that changed American cultural history: a whole lot of country and Western music. ASCAP had largely ignored country artists, considered them too rural, too lowbrow. BMI signed them by the hundreds. And suddenly, country music was on every radio in America, every day for nearly a year. The 1941 ASCAP blackout accidentally mainstreamed an entire genre. ASCAP finally settled in May 1941, at roughly half the rates they originally demanded. It was a humiliation. But the United States government was already putting on its shoes.
Same year, 1941, the U.S. Department of Justice files a civil antitrust lawsuit against ASCAP. Under the Sherman Antitrust Act, the same law used to break up Standard Oil, the government's argument was simple. ASCAP's blanket licensing model is an illegal restraint of trade. You want to play music at your business? You pay ASCAP's fee for their entire catalog. You cannot negotiate. You cannot pick individual songs. Take the blanket license or face federal copyright infringement. There's no choice, there's no competition. That is, legally speaking, a monopoly wearing a nonprofit badge. ASCAP agreed to a consent decree, a court-supervised agreement to play fair. That consent decree has been in place, with modifications, for over 80 years. 80 years, which tells you something important about how consistently the playing fair part actually went. In 2016, not 1950, not 1970, the DOJ settled a civil contempt claim against ASCAP for entering into approximately 150 exclusive contracts that directly violated the consent decree. ASCAP paid $1.75 million and was forced once again to reform. 75 years after the first antitrust case. Still doing it. Okay, here we go. Happy Birthday to You, the most recognized song in the English language. You've sung it hundreds of times. It's essentially hardwired into your brain. But the history of who owned it, who profited from it, and how it ended up free, that story is genuinely wild. The melody traces back to 1893, a song called Good Morning to All, written by two sisters named Mildred and Patty Hill for their kindergarten class in Louisville, Kentucky. The Happy Birthday lyrics were adapted from that melody over the following years. By the early 1900s, the entire world knew them. In 1935, a formal copyright was registered. The Summy Company obtained the rights. In 1938, Summy granted ASCAP the right to license Happy Birthday and collect fees on their behalf. Then, in 1988, Warner Chappell Music bought the rights for an estimated $25 million for a song written for kindergartners. From that point on, Warner Chappell collected roughly $2 million a year. Every film with a birthday scene paid, every TV show paid. Restaurant chains either paid or wrote their own janky substitute birthday song, which is exactly why you've heard approximately 14 different corporate birthday songs in your life and never understood why. That's why. Copyright scholars had been saying for years, decades, that the copyright on the Happy Birthday lyrics was likely invalid, that the Hill sisters had only transferred rights to the melody, not the words, that what Warner Chappell was selling was, essentially, rights to words they had never actually owned. In 2013, filmmaker Jennifer Nelson filed a class action lawsuit. In September 2015, U.S. District Judge George King ruled that Warner Chappell's copyright claim on the Happy Birthday lyrics was not supported by the evidence. In 2016, Warner Chappell settled for $14 million. The song was officially declared public domain. Warner Chappell had collected an estimated $56 million in licensing fees since 1988. They paid back $14 million of it. The song your grandmother sang at your 5th birthday party, the most sung song on Earth, was free the whole time. The copyright may have been invalid from the beginning.
But here's where this stops being history and starts being what happened to a business in your city last week. Because ASCAP doesn't just go after Hollywood studios. They go after small bars, local restaurants, community open mics. And the tactics they use, honestly, they read like a movie. Picture this. You own a bar in Phoenix, Arizona. You run a small open mic, local singer-songwriters playing their own original material. ASCAP sends in undercover field agents, and yes, they actually send them undercover, who sit in the bar, document what's played, and then file federal lawsuits. This exact scenario happened to a real Phoenix bar owner. 2 ASCAP-protected songs were identified during a karaoke night. ASCAP secretly documented them, a federal lawsuit followed, the owner paid $11,000 to settle. The bar eventually closed. And then, this part is almost too good to make up. ASCAP reached out to that same bar owner and invited him to become a local field agent and identify other venues violating ASCAP licensing rules. He declined. Colorfully. As recently as March 2026, ASCAP sent an undercover investigator into Baseline Social, an upscale lounge in New Jersey, documented 6 unlicensed songs, and filed a federal copyright infringement lawsuit. This is not ancient history. This is happening right now. Small venues can pay anywhere from $300 to $7,000 per year just to ASCAP, before you add BMI, CSAC, and global music rights. The National Restaurant Association reports members pay an average of $4,500 per year just to license music. For a small bar on razor-thin margins, that is a line item that can end a business.
So, is ASCAP actually a scam? Here's the honest answer. It's complicated. The original idea was not a scam. Victor Herbert was right to be furious in that restaurant in 1913. Composers deserve compensation when their work is used publicly. Over 1.1 million songwriters and publishers receive royalty distributions today because this system exists. But what grew out of that principle has done things that are genuinely hard to defend. Collected fees on a song it may have never legally owned, $56 million. Raised radio licensing rates by 448%. Violated its own antitrust consent decree across multiple decades. The line between protecting artists and operating a government-enforced licensing monopoly got blurry a very long time ago. In 2026, in an era of streaming and AI-generated music and digital rights management, does the blanket licensing model that ASCAP built in 1914 still make sense? Or is it a relic of an era when the only way to know who played what song was to send a guy in a suit into a bar with a legal pad? Whoever builds the next model, the transparent one, the actually fair one, is going to reshape an industry worth billions. But for now, Happy Birthday is free. So the next time someone sings it to you, enjoy it. Nobody's collecting. The next video is right there. It makes this one look like a warm-up.